Good day and welcome to SCO BRICS Insight, where we look at what's really going on in the world of the BRICS. Now, my name's Rod Mackenzie, and today I want to talk about Russian energy. Now, at the end of April, the Russian Prime Minister Mikhail Mishustin approved the Energy Strategy of Russia plan through until 2050. Now, the strategy's objective is to transition the energy sector of Russia to a new paradigm, ensuring affordable and reliable energy provisions for the population and the Russian economy, with products and services from the fuel and energy sector. Now, despite the loss of the European market, it's anticipated that gas production will continue to grow in Russia. So what will the actions and methods that need to be done to successfully achieve the goals laid out in this particular plan? Now, Russia is number one in the world in gas production and number three currently in oil production. And it was reported that the decision to revise the document was recently taken in accordance with instructions from the President Vladimir Putin. Now, one of the first chapters of the strategy, which is devoted to the current state of the mineral resource base in the country, states that the total oil reserves in Russia, including those in the known oil and gas provinces, including explored fields, but at the same time unexplored but promising areas, amount to about 31.3 billion tonnes. So at the current rate of production, the discovered reserves will last for more than 65 years, and that's just the ones they know about. Russia also boasts the third largest share of global oil reserves, with 15% of the world's total, and the second largest share of actual global refined oil production, with around 10%. The situation with gas is actually much more promising. Russia is proud to hold the top position in the global rankings. The country's gas reserves are estimated at 63.4 trillion cubic metres, and the country's share of its production is 16%, placing it second in global production. However, the country's natural gas reserves are estimated to last for approximately 100 years, which is not a short time. Now, before I continue, I'd like to make an appeal. If you like and enjoy my videos, you can help me fund the channel and my website, SCOBRICSInsight.com, to further develop it. You can do this by making a small donation, which you can do by clicking on the thanks button at the bottom of the video screen. Everybody who donates does get a personal thank you from me, and I'm thanking you all now. Please keep the comments coming. Please like, share and subscribe. Now, the coal industry, the amount of raw material reserves is around 273 billion tonnes. And these reserves are projected to last for another 5 centuries. And Russia's share of global coal reserves is just under 7%, and its contribution to global production is around 5%. Currently, Russia's in about 5th or 6th place, but it does have a unique place among other countries, being simultaneously a major producer, consumer and exporter of energy resources. And it's also one of the largest economies in the world. Yet Russia's fuel and energy balance is one of the lowest carbon output. Now, according to the most recent figures as of January the 1st, 2023, hydroelectric power generation accounted for almost 21% of Russia's electrical capacity, while nuclear power plants accounted for almost 12%. Other renewables were only around 2%. However, over time, the share of renewable energy resources, hydroelectric power plants and nuclear power plants, is expected to continue to increase. By 2042, the latter is expected to exceed 45%, and that will be attributed to two main factors: the increased demand for electricity and the introduction of environmental standards that are aimed at reducing the emissions of harmful substances during their production. So it's estimated that the annual growth in electricity consumption in Russia will increase from 1,052 billion kilowatt hours in 2023 to 1,450 billion kilowatt hours in 2042. Now, the Energy Strategy reports that despite unfavourable external conditions in the fuel and energy sector, its sustainability indicators remain its key to the economy and the country's budget. I mean, specifically in 2024, revenues from the fuel and energy complex industries accounted for 9.6 trillion rubles, which is 33% of the total volume of the budget of the country. According to the Ministry of Finance, the sector has demonstrated growth again, and in 2025 it should reach 11.13, which is now actually lower because only 25% of the total volume, and that can be attributed to the changes in the production of both oil and gas. I mean, gas production's gone down, reaching 637 rubles, so it's down about 5%. Now, then it's expected to keep growing this year and the next, and it will reach 685 billion cubic meters. And that's because of the exploitation of the export of pipeline gas and LNG. Now, according to the Deputy Prime Minister, Alexander Novak, he says stated that exports of Russian pipeline gas increased by 15.6%, reaching 119 billion cubic meters, and exports of liquefied natural gas reached 47.2% up. So, higher gas production volumes are also expected in 2025. Now, the reasons are clear. Gas consumption in Russia has increased, particularly among fertilizer producers, private households, and also industrial enterprises. The issue of oil is obviously a separate matter because Russia and its economic interests are closely tied to its commitments made within the OPEC Plus framework, which have had difficulties trying to maintain stable oil prices. However, in order to achieve this, it was necessary to implement a reduction in production. In 2023, it was a 1% decrease in Russia, reaching 531 million tonnes, and 2024 it was down by 3.5%, amounting to 516 million tonnes. However, at the same time, Russia's oil exports did increase from 234 million tonnes to 240 million tonnes, and that, according to the Russian federal statistics, was a record. Now, coal production remained stable last year with 427 million tonnes, and concurrently, coal exports from Russia have gone down, and that's part of the unfavourable pricing conditions in Russia's major export markets, which have lost Europe as so the main export markets now are Asia. Now, the major external challenges identified in the strategy is the reorientation of Russia's energy resources. However, the ministry says that they're confident that it's not going to cause any serious problems. Their strategy's target scenario anticipates a modest rise in oil exports by 2050, estimated around 4 or 5%, or around 540 million tonnes. Now, it's estimated that a further 125 million tonnes of oil export products will be exported. So it's imperative to acknowledge that sustaining the present level of output necessitates the implementation of mechanisms to facilitate the oil of extraction from fields that are nearing the end of their lifespan. I mean, many of these fields were initiated during the Soviet era and they're now experiencing considerable flooding, according to Sergei Frolov, who's a manager at Neft Research. Now, on to refining. Now, it's evident that the domestic market will continue to be prioritised, and fuel in the domestic market is important because electric vehicles just ain't hacking it here. However, it's equally important that export deliveries will still always remain a major priority, with the primary export level being to Europe, and that's diesel fuel. They just can't get enough of it. However, situation with gas exports is going to change dramatically. Now, according to the strategy, natural gas is going to increase by 45% to 2050 to 1.1 trillion cubic meters. And of that, 438 billion cubic meters are intended for export. Now, that's a very optimistic scenario, which assumes a significant increase in the production capacity of Novatek. Now, that includes the monetization of the resource base that was intended for the Nord Stream 1 and 2 pipelines, as well as the expansion of supplies by the Power of Siberia and the launch of Siberia Power 2. Now, according to Mikhail Grigoriev, who's a director of the consulting company Gekon, an academic, and he thinks this is a strategy is actually going to be worthwhile. I mean, Russia's expected to launch 3 new LNG plants in the next 3 years. They're the Ob LNG, Arctic LNG 1, and Murmansk LNG, with a total of capacity of 45.5 million tons per year. Theoretically, such an opportunity emerged following the creation of the first high-power turbine, which I did a video on, the GT10 110. But its serial production is still only beginning, so it'll be a couple of years before that really happens. Now, also imperative to acknowledge that currently the plants of the Novatech are currently subject to sanctions, but we don't expect that to continue for too much longer. I mean, consequently, I think they're going to have to market currently the LNG is going to China or India, but they're going to have to offer a level of discounts. But I thought we'd see that being potentially that much. I mean, the major problem there is they need to develop gas chemistry and increase in polymers and plastics production. So in accordance with the target scenario, it plans to produce an approximately 18 million tons of large tonnage polymers by 2050. It's an ambitious project, but it's certainly achievable with the Amur gas plant, etc. So in order to consume the plant, this figure is actually going to have to be significantly increased. So anyway, that's Russia's plan. It's nuclear, it's gas, and that's what they're looking for. Thanks for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. Also set the alert button so you get informed when I post a new video, and click on the thanks button at the bottom of the video screen if you want to make a donation. Thank you.